We all got thrown out. Hopefully people come back.
Oh my God, I didn't even think about that.
It's all good. It's all good. It's not your fault. It's Friday.
Yeah.
I threw everything up by being like, I'm not going to be there, but here we are.
And we're back.
It's so good to see all of you. Give it a
You
couple
too.
months. Yeah.
Kathy,
Yes.
I feel like we spent the whole day together.
I know, right?
What have you guys been doing?
Chris, you too. Chris,
Yep.
I think, was on a call earlier. And
He sure was.
who else did I see?
He was private messaging me and then not replying.
The nerve.
I'm sorry. I was trying to keep track. I was private messaging EB and Brad, and sorry, I missed it.
Ah,
That's okay.
see?
And there was so much they put in
You
the
thought
chat.
it was you.
Well, and then I was following all the links too,
Yeah,
so it was an active morning.
It was.
That meeting this morning was awesome.
Oh, it
Yeah.
was incredible.
It was like 3 meetings in one. It felt like I'm a bit tired, actually.
I was like I'm always excited about the Friday meetings, but today just felt like, oh, there's so much happening.
I know.
Well, and after, I don't know how many of you went to the symposium on Wednesday and Thursday, but that was, I looked at the agenda and I thought, this is not going to work for me. I'm not this person. I can't do 15-minute presentations. But I was like jamming for 6 hours, typing notes. And I'm like putting in chat, is somebody going to send these slides out? And yeah, it was crazy amazing.
Yeah, you were asking a lot of questions. I saw you there too. That probably feels like I feel like I've spent the whole week with you then.
Yes.
Because I was there too. Anybody else go?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
And I will say that I was thinking that I could like multitask, you answering email and doing other things. And I was like, no, I can't keep up. Stop, slow down.
And a shout out to Bobby.
Yeah, Bobby, you crushed it, man. Good job,
Oh
dude.
my God, yeah.
That was
I felt
fun.
like you were live. Were you live? It felt live.
No, but there's nothing better in the world than to sit and watch yourself overuse body language with 300 strangers. You're just like, taper it down, bro. Come on.
I love that.
But that's you. I've presented with you. I've been on stage with you. You are all encompassing. And so you brought that. And frankly, that was great.
But I guess he never has been recorded and had to watch himself after the fact
No.
and then be available to answer questions.
It's just like the weirdest. I know Rory did it for a whole hour with HSUS too, right, Rory?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they did the same thing for HSUS, but it was pretty cool because then when I was interacting with the audience, I didn't have to focus on also figuring out what I was talking about. You know what I mean? So I could really focus on what people were asking questions about. And
Yeah,
I really like that platform, actually. I think it works really well.
you did well too.
Thank you.
I know I was sending you notes.
I know that was so nice. Do people know if it's accessible? Like, how long is the symposium up for, or was it just for the days that it was like live?
No, it's still up because Isabel Wilkerson will be presenting October 6th. And they're just like HSUS did. HSUS continues to add content. They're going to, I think they're going to do that as well. But Isabel, so your ticket that you got for those 2 days goes towards Isabel's presentation as well. And Maddie's Fund is the sponsor of that presentation.
Love it. Oh, that's so awesome. Okay, cool. That makes me feel better because I haven't been able to go to anything this week and I was really bummed, and I obviously need to see Bobby's presentation.
Well,
and I think
now that we've teased it for you.
They're going to send out the links for the recordings on Monday.
Yeah.
And I think they said it'd be available till the end of the year, but I don't remember for sure because I've got too many of these things going on in my head.
And if anybody attended the HSUS, I know that seems like so long ago, but they recently added Radical RTO with our own Chris Fitzgerald, who is part of it.
Oh, awesome.
And who else? I'm looking at everybody else. I'm sure I'm missing someone on here, giving shout outs to people. Let me look at page 2. Well, Gina Neff.
Gina Neff
Yep.
and Mandy Evans.
Mandy. Yeah, it was fantastic also.
Awesome.
So
Cool. I'm gonna definitely check that out this weekend. Now I know what
Okay.
I'm doing on the weekend. Such a
there you
nerd.
go. There, you need to relax too and rest. Don't
That
forget.
is relaxing.
Self-care, everybody. Okay, can I ask everyone really quick, and then I'll shut up. We are like on the verge of getting rain here in Oregon. We got rain this morning up in the Portland area in the north part, but I'm in the middle, and it's like threatening to try. So if everyone could just say just a positive affirmation for rain for Bend, Oregon, and the rest of Oregon, that would be, I mean, it's like on the verge. Come
Prayers
on.
up for you guys. I know me and Erica are looking at each other like, it's rained every day for the last 3 months.
I know, we need your rain. I will not send you flyers though. That's just cruel.
Well, we
That
got
is fair. Thank you.
Nice and sunny here in southern Ontario, but cold.
We'll send you the 10 inches we got yesterday.
Thank you. Yes, we can use
Wow.
it. Thank you. All right, over to you, Rory.
The disaster grants are still open with Petco Foundation. They announced that this morning, but I'm trying to just spread that far and wide because everyone's dealing with disasters right now. And yeah, today, sorry, no. Kelly, you want to introduce Danielle?
Sure. So today we have Danielle Harris. She's here from Pima Animal Care Center in Tucson. She's going to tell us about their intake to placement program. And I'm super excited about this because I feel like I know very little about intake to placement, and I would love to learn. Danielle, can you tell us about what you guys are doing?
Yeah, so excuse me, I've been a little under the weather, so if I start hacking up my lungs, I apologize. So really this conversation started pre-COVID, and it was really started with our lost and found department. One of the girls who works in our lost and found department was like, I don't understand why I'm begging these people to keep these found pets and we don't offer them resources, and wouldn't it be best if they weren't here in the shelter? And I mean, as we all know, yes, that's the best place for them is not here in the shelter. So conversation started pre-COVID, and then COVID hit, right? And our shelters emptied. That was amazing for all of us. And I think we all started to realize that what the dream we had been pushing so hard for, to not have all these animals in our shelter, had happened, even though it was around a pandemic. And how do we keep them out into the community where they really belong? So started a bigger discussion of owner surrenders and the 72 hours and getting them out quicker. So for us, kind of how it happens is someone will call into our pet support center. Excuse me. Obviously, we offer them resources first because the main goal is to keep them with their person. But if they can't take our resources or they don't want to, then we certainly will offer an owner surrender appointment. But what we've started doing is saying, yep, we'll help you rehome your pet, but we're going to schedule your appointment for 2 or 3 weeks out. During that time, we're going to ask you to put your pet on a rehome website, and we're going to help you if you can't rehome your pet on your own. We have our intake to placement manager and some volunteers who are willing to step up and help these people who can't or maybe don't want to do the work. So turning them into a resource, even though they're not even realizing that that's what we're doing. And then once those appointments are getting close to the animal actually coming here and they haven't rehomed them on their own, or it's a stray and they're getting ready to come into our facility, then Cynthia Franco will start to look at what's scheduled about 3 days out from coming in, and she'll really start to dive into where can those pets go? Can they go to a foster home? We have an on-deck foster list of people, and they tell us exactly what they're willing to take. So we can start reaching out to those people and saying, hey, we have a little Chihuahua, easy peasy coming in. Can you take it now? Can you take it straight from the moment that it walks through the door? Or we'll start reaching out to our rescues and asking them if they can take the pet now or meet here when the animal is being surrendered. So it's working. We're still working out, some bugs. This is fairly new, I think, to us too. But definitely the future of sheltering. I mean, there's no reason for an animal, at least in our community. I know some communities you do have to have the animal on site for their stray hold, but in Pima County you don't. And so there's no reason for those pets to sit here while they're waiting for their stray hold. I guess with that being said, obviously you want to make sure you're being proactive, having people post these found pets on your website as well as Paw Boost and those sorts of things.
So intake to placement, sorry, does it encompasses like a several different strategies, like the foster on deck and having fosters at the ready, also finder to foster, all of those things that are, you know, getting it out in 72 hours or so.
Yeah. And you know, sometimes Cynthia will go through the list of things, and maybe our pet support missed something, and maybe it's not going to be an intake. Maybe it's oh, well, we really could keep this animal with its owner. So that's happened too. And just getting a fresh set of eyes looking at the situation. And maybe that appointment was scheduled 3 weeks ago and now things changed in their life. And so we may be able to offer resources. So I think that it's intake to placement, but it also opens up another door to really talk to those owners about what their situation is, and maybe even not have to find another placement, and that we can keep that placement for an animal that really needs it.
So can you share what your intake is and just a little bit about what your pet support center does and what resources you do offer? Because I think that's sort of it. In order for this all to work, you do sort of have to have that piece in place too.
Yeah, well, you know, our pet support is a great first contact, but our admissions team, we refer to them as the diversion team, if you will, because a lot of times the animals will show up here and they're doing the work. And so, you know, you may not need a pet support center in order to do this if that's not a possibility funding wise. Your admissions team can be taught to do these things. Like, they're constantly sending things straight to rescue or calling the foster team and saying, hey, this super easy dog came in, can you find a foster for it? So it doesn't have to be a pet support team. It's definitely nice. But our pet support team is a call center environment. And so people will call in, and obviously they're wanting to surrender their pet. That's what they're calling for. But we have resources. We have a wellness clinic that we're doing currently. So our vets will see small things like ear infections, that sort of stuff. We also have boarding support that we offer to people. So if someone's, you know, going into the hospital for a week or so, we can board their pet for them. Let's see, what do we have? I mean, you know, behavior help, crates, those sorts of things. And then Rory, I think you asked what our intake was. Are you asking like our annual intake?
Yeah, and how many people are calling the pet support center and getting assistance through your pet support center?
That's a good question. I don't really know the exact number. Sarah could probably answer that question. But our annual intake is about 16 to 17,000 animals. And I would say that we get hundreds of calls every day, but I don't know the exact number. I'm sorry.
And it looks like Kathy has a question for you. Kathy, do you want to?
Sure. I was just wondering, I understand in listening to Kristen that you guys have, at least in the past, had a significant number of intakes annually. So I'm wondering how you track this whole process as it moves through from the initial call to the sort of potential surrender date, because you indicated that one of the team members will really get going about 3 days prior to. So how is it that you're tracking all of this for what I presume are multiple numbers of animals you've got on the list at any given time?
So everything we do gets tracked through Chameleon is what we use. So our pet support center tracks the moment that they talk to somebody and what the outcome was for that, whether it be making an appointment or offering a resource or offering them medical care. And then when Cynthia goes in and she finds a rescue or a foster or whatever, then it all gets tracked through Chameleon as well.
Thanks. We use Chameleon also, but I'm thinking we're not using it to its fullest capacity if you're tracking something that way with it. I'll have to get
Probably not. And Josh, who works here, is a great resource. I can get you his email, and Sarah's also a great chameleon resource as well.
Absolutely love to put them in touch with my team for sure.
Danielle, I just have a question about the rehoming support. Do you work then just with one rehoming service? Is it home to home?
We're currently just working with Rehome.
Rehome, okay. So as a government entity then, did you have to make a case for selecting one, like with a RFP process, or did anybody ask, or did you just go ahead and just pick one?
We didn't, but we didn't ask, but we're really kind of not putting our hands on it that much. It's going really through Rehome. We're telling them to use the resource. Now, if we have somebody who's like, well, I don't have a computer or whatever, we have volunteers who will help. But I think that we got away with not having to get the county involved because we're like, they have their own contract. We're not really signing a contract with them. It's really just, we're asking people to go onto their website.
So, but is it officially through Rehome and where you're getting the adoption fees? Okay.
Well, we've been doing that for a while.
Yeah.
Again, getting adoption fees through them, unbeknownst to us really, because we didn't know that people were going onto it and using it.
Sure.
But apparently they have been, so that's great. And now we're just pushing it a little bit more. But again, we're not telling them that we're not going to take their pet. We're just saying, hey, our appointments are 3 weeks out, so while you're waiting, you should just go ahead and do this. And then, you know, maybe if they're not wanting to do it, there's been talk, and we haven't actually done this yet, but talk of getting some volunteers involved in maybe pulling those applications that maybe were submitted for a dog, but the owner didn't really want to go through the Rehome website, and maybe even reaching out to those people and saying, hey, we have this dog now, come down and adopt it. So, but that would take more work, obviously, with volunteers and stuff.
So just so that I can end this and turn it back over to Rory, I'd be interested to know what other groups out there, particularly government groups, are using, if you're using one or multiples, and you can put it in the chat or email the group so that we don't have to spend any more time on it. Thanks.
It's a really good question though about the RFP. I'm curious if anyone has had to do that or if it's just been really flexible because it is sort of like a third, I don't know, like a loophole thing.
Go
ahead, Sarah.
Sorry. So I was still in PAC when we started evaluating like what worked best for PAC, home to home or rehome, or there was a third one I think we looked at. And we put all of the information together. One of the things that PAC is really good at is using the friends to kind of circumnavigate all of the government requirements for RFPs and stuff as well. So we had all of the data, like the evaluation comparisons put together if we needed to do the RFP. And then I left right kind of in between that. But the friends group has always been the fallback for, we don't want to do that.
Yeah, will you explain a little more about the Friends group setup? Because I don't know how many people know about Friends of PAC, and it's really pretty genius. And I know Erica wanted to say something too, so.
Yeah, so with PEMA, the Friends group is the nonprofit arm. They have their own development staff and administrative staff. They I'm not sure what all needs to be said about them. They operate in really close partnership with PAC. They're not like completely independent doing their own deal. They're able to run a lot of the offerings or promotions or things that we can't offer through the county. They're the ones that manage the pet insurance program for adopters, because that has kind of a kickback, and there's obviously competition between different pet insurance. So that goes through the Friends group. They do grants and things separate from government.
But they bring in millions of dollars, right? Danielle, how much, do you have an idea of that number? I'm not sure, but it's a lot. So any grants are sort of being siphoned through the Friends group so that it's not having to, you don't have to deal with the government. But
right, and they
really
provide in 2019, they provided over $1 million worth of services to the municipal shelter, because they provided staffing, where they hired people that worked for for PAC without working for the government. They managed grants. They provided various levels of support and advertising. So we estimated it was over $1 million worth value to the municipal shelter.
Yeah, it's easy. They're able to fundraise, whereas most municipal shelters are not able to fundraise because tax dollars. So it makes it easier. Actually, Cynthia, who's the intake to placement, she gets paid through them. So they fund some very, very important positions for PAC.
Erica, what was your thought or question?
I sort of forgot. No, I was just going to say that that I said it in the chat that we're not able to do home to home. We are still advertising that people can use rehome on Adopt a Pet, and then we have our own one that I put a link in, that essentially we will put people, a few weeks out to surrender their animal, and in the meantime we'll advertise it on our own website. And the only issue has become sort of advertising the animals that are available on our website that are in the community, and being able to provide support for those owners. Some of those are people that have adopted an animal from us years ago, or a friend or family member did, and now that person has passed away, or for whatever reason their family dynamics have changed and it's not working out, and they have no intention of bringing it to us, but they're just looking for a resource to rehome without using social media. Because a lot of people are shying away from that, but it's been a little bit of an undertaking because people still apply to us like they would as if the animal was in our building, and then we pass the information on to the current owner. But we were surprised how many are on there of people that have passed away. That seems to be
curious about that. You guys, you put them on your own website. These are pets that you've never actually seen in your facility, and does that open you up for maybe lawsuits? Or because that's something that we talked about doing too, but I think with rehome, right, it's on them and you don't have any legal obligation to it because you're not actually saying that this pet is a sound pet. But if you're putting it on your own website, do you open yourself up to that?
It's a good question. I mean, we haven't had any kickback from legal. They were fine with it. We have a disclaimer on that link. If you pass it through, you'll see at the bottom that there's a disclaimer that I would say, I'm trying to think right now, I think half of the animals that are on there have been through the shelter before. And so they were adopted from us. And the other half, we were surprised there was a number of people that took in stray kittens and then they decided they had allergies or it was too much to handle or that kind of thing. So we're just rehoming kittens. So we do ask people to fill out a pretty comprehensive behavior form, much like they would as if they were surrendering to the shelter. So we can provide that to the potential new owner or inquiring adopter as well. So we just link that in Chameleon so you can pull that up with their information in Chameleon so that they can see it. Mel, did you want to add anything?
No, I think you covered it.
She's helping us head this up. She's our lost found coordinator and our intake coordinator. So she does lost found and intake, and now we're realizing she's playing the role of like 4 people in our building.
Thank you. That's good to know. Thank you.
How long
Danielle.
have you had an intake to placement? Oh, sorry. I'm like
No, go ahead.
for you so much, Kelly.
No, not at all. Go ahead.
I'm just curious how long Cynthia's been in that role and
Not long, not long. It's really been a couple of weeks. So she's really been diving into it in the last few weeks. I mean, like I said, we've had our admissions team working as a diversion team and our pet support and our lost and found doing all of these things, but having somebody dedicated to building the program, writing SOPs, writing all of these things, it's really only been a
For the foster on deck portion, how do you guys manage that? Is it updated on a regular? I mean, I know people put their information on there if they're open for a pet, but like if they did it last month, do they need to do it within a certain, like again at a certain time, or how does that work?
No. So we just start reaching out to everyone who's on it who says, oh, I'll take a little dog or I'll take a cat or whatever it is. And I mean, I think kind of foster coordinators all kind of work the same. They start at the top, or they start with people they know will take certain pets and then kind of just work your way down. But some of these people that signed up on this list were not people who have ever been fosters for us. And they kind of came out of the woodworks when COVID hit and we were freaking out because we didn't know what we were going to do with all of our pets, like everybody else on this call was. So some of them just kind of came out of the woodworks from there. And we just, Scrappy, who's our lost and found person, she was like, I'm just going to try this with one dog and I'm going to see what happens. And she picked a Chihuahua and she called someone and said, hey, will you meet this finder and foster this dog for us to stray hold? And they said, yep. And we were like, cool, and just kept going with it.
Hey, question for you. On the ones that you're calling, the surrenders that you're booking for your appointments and you're potentially calling rescues to set up to help out, are you, one of the benefits that rescues find in pulling from us is that we completely vet the animals. Are you doing that before they go to the rescue?
No, we have a lot of rescues who will just pull from us. No, we don't vet them, but we do microchip, vaccinate, and do all those sorts of things. But they oftentimes don't see a vet and sometimes don't see our behavior team either. We have a lot of rescues willing to pull from us that way. Not all of them will, obviously. And so that is when the 72 hours comes in and us doing those things within the 72 hours. So they will pull from us, but we have quite a few rescues that take littler dogs who will just come straight from the moment they come in the door and scoop them up from us, keep them through their stray hold, and then adopt them out if no owner comes forward.
Someone's asking who funds that.
Who funds what? I'm sorry.
Brandy, do you want to ask?
Yeah, sorry, I was talking to Erica about who funds the vetting costs for the rescue animals.
City taxpayers.
Well, we need those folks here because that would not fly.
Yeah, it was interesting when I was listening to Kristen this morning talking about paying fosters for boarding and that kind of thing. I thought, oh my gosh, our citizens would have a field day if we were paying for something like that. But we do have an active Friends of group that helps us out a great deal. And we are not asking them for a whole lot of resources at this point because they're actually building a spay-neuter clinic for us in this community. With several $1 million they got donated randomly by somebody who died and had adopted an animal from us. So it was a small miracle and we are super thankful, and they bought a building and they're renovating it for a spay-neuter clinic for our region.
That's amazing. I can tell you that a lot of our rescue partners will tag from us because we can get them vetted. We do, of course, charge them a reimbursement fee, but they are so far behind at their clinics up north due to COVID that if we market something as, hey, this is already fixed and vetted, and then they're more apt to tag that dog over another one that's not. So that's great.
Yeah, we started to run into that with our rescues too, and thankfully got the blessing from the higher ups in the county to start spaying and neutering some of the animals that maybe didn't come from our shelter but would have ended up here, but they're in a rescue instead. And so we've started doing some of those, like puppies and kittens, and justifying it as, well, if they didn't go to a rescue first, they would have ended up here anyways. I think it's all how you spin doing certain things to people in leadership, and telling them that you're vaccinating and microchipping and doing all these things for animals that don't actually come into the community could be like, why are you spending my tax dollars on that? But spinning it to be like, well, that's a drop in the bucket of what it would cost if the animal is actually staying here. So Kristen's really good at making things sound a lot better than the community wants to know they are, I guess.
Randy, did you ask a question for Erica?
I'm sorry. I was just asking about the heartworm, like, you know, Arkansas, everything is heartworm positive here. So is that something that you or the taxpayers fund, pay for treatment, or is that the rescue's responsibility?
Good question. So about 50%, 40 to 50% of our dogs over 6 months old are positive as well. And so we adopt them out positive. We do the heartworm treatments back at the shelter. Occasionally we will cover that for rescues if the animal is, I don't want to say unadoptable, but definitely needs a rescue over being at the shelter. So if it's a large rambunctious pit bull, yeah, we'll do it all day long and offer them that free heartworm treatment. But if it's a little Maltese that we're throwing at them, you know, for another reason, yeah, no, they need to come up with the cost for that. But our foundation was covering the cost of that. We have been covering the cost of that. Of course, when Doxy was really expensive, that was a hard thing to swallow. But during the pandemic, what we ran into is that we didn't offer it when we weren't doing spays and neuters. So the Friends of group was able to outsource to a local vet who had plenty of time and energy to be able to take them on, and essentially paid them something like $230 an animal. And all the adopters during that period were able to go to that particular clinic to get treated.
That's amazing. We have one facility in Little Rock that if rescues tag something that's positive, they will treat, but again, has to be at their facility to treat it. But at our shelter, we do not even heartworm test at this time, even adopted animals to the public, because it has to do with the pet insurance that 24 Pet Watch offers through through Pet Point, because we have been informed that if we heartworm test prior to adoption, it's considered a pre-existing condition and they won't cover it at all. So that's been a little controversial as far as, you know, especially with adopters. Some aren't educated on heartworm, and then they find out when they take their dog to the vet that it has heartworms, and why didn't you tell us? And it's hard for us on this side of it because, you know, we can't, you know, if we test the animal before, again, it's not covered, but a lot of the adopters don't proceed with the pet insurance anyway. So it's I don't know. We're trying to, between myself and Shelby, we're trying to figure out how to figure out the education process for that, and also you know, funding, because if we start heartworm testing everything, then we also want to be able to provide prevention or treatment, or at least a low cost option, because here we don't have a low cost option for treatment anymore. We are looking at, you know, $600, $700, $800, depending on the size of the dog, up to $1,200 for some Great Danes we just had treated. I mean, I hate to say it, but a lot of our people around here do not have that kind of funds. And so what are the options? You don't treat, you don't use prevention, and they die a slow death. So it's, I don't know, it's hard, you know, it's really hard being in a municipal facility and knowing the right thing to do, but also knowing that there's very little resources to provide that right thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I will say that one thing that we encountered when we started doing heartworm treatment was that people would go to their veterinarian for their initial follow-up, like right after adoption, when you say, hey, you go to your vet within the first 7 days, and the vet would say, well, I'm not going to sell you heartworm prevention because this is a positive dog. And so that's what we ran into. And we were like, well, we can't wait months to have this dog treated because we were backlogged on treatment. We can't treat everything that we adopt out the following month when the doxy is up. So we started offering heartworm medication for sale at the time of adoption. They can only get it at the time of adoption, and they can get 6 months worth for $15. And so that's at cost. And most people, our adoption fees for dogs are only $30 anyway. So it's not that big of a deal for somebody to go, okay, $45 and I got 6 months. At least if that dog gets returned in a few months, we know that it's been on medication, and it's a requirement to purchase that $15 worth of medication in order to be in the heartworm treatment program. Now this year, when we had to delay things and get set up with the private vet and that kind of thing to do the treatments, we started offering a year's worth. So as long as the dog's over 10 months old, we will sell them a year's worth of medication for $30. Same as the adoption fee. So, but that is a requirement of the program so that we know that that dog is being maintained on heartworm medication during the time of treatment and after.
Jordana, you had some good questions in the chat. Do you want to ask?
I'll try. My audio isn't very good. Can you guys hear me? Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'm wondering if you guys, Randy, if you guys do like a waiver and talk to the adopters and tell them, you know, this dog has not been tested and this is why. And maybe even have them sign something saying like they understand the dog could be heartworm positive and these are their options. Or potentially, I mean, Advantage Multi isn't cheap either, but being able, if you can provide like 7 months of Advantage Multi, if they test positive, maybe looking at a workaround to provide that. It's definitely cheaper than, you know, $900 of fast kill, and could be a good option for some people.
So I don't think that they mentioned it during the adoption process. The contract that you signed is basically as is. So I think that covers the liability on our side. But we, like I said, we were trying to figure out a way to offer prevention. Myself, outside of the shelter, through our rescue, we do a lot of public sterilizations, and I fell down that rabbit hole of doing heartworm testing on public animals, even if they didn't request it, just so they would know. But we're talking about people that can't even afford $10 to get their pet fixed. So that then put me on the spot because I felt obligated to somehow provide these families with prevention. And now here I am years later, and you're still kind of doing the same thing. And it's a rough road because, you know, you're kind of stuck with it. And you know that if you get off of it at some point, it's just going to be positive again pretty soon, or, you know, may still be positive when you're doing the slow treatment. So I don't know what the answer for that is for a municipal facility that we're working on a friends group right now. It's pending with IRS. But as far as being able to provide it to our adopters, I don't think we're there yet as far as the funding side of it. I don't know. I don't think there's any good answer for it. If so, I don't know it. I just know that it's such a big deal in the South. You know, like I said, the majority of our dogs that are going to rescue, we heartworm test them because the rescue wants to know, and the majority of them are positive. So I don't know what the and falling down, doing the ivermectin. I mean, I don't know if y'all know the ivermectin route, but that's such a scary thing when you're directing the public to do something like that could potentially poison their dogs, especially when they, the weight fluctuates, or, I don't know. I feel like I'm rambling now, but it's such a big deal for us here. And I think it's our job to educate people. And if we can't educate them on this and provide them with resources, then I'm not sure that we're doing our duty and fulfilling that education side of things. But it's hard because, part of the HOS stuff is the no judgment and providing resources for people. And And not that you're judging them, but you know, part of taking care of your pet is providing prevention for them on a monthly basis. And it's just not.
It's definitely tough. I mean, heartworm prevention and treatment, one of those things that it's like, why is it so expensive?
It is, yes.
Very basic care, yet it's not within financial reach for probably most people, I would say.
Well, and when you have the majority of, well, I say the majority, I keep saying that, but we are in the South where the mentality is not always that your dog is your pet. A lot of pets live outside here, and a lot of people have multiple pets. Sterilization is just a hard thing to get people to do around here, and we are practically giving it to them. I mean, I'm like $5 to get your cat fixed, whether it's pregnant, it doesn't matter. And I will drive it to the clinic. You literally just have to bring it 5 minutes to me, and they still don't do it. So, you know, trying to break those barriers and providing options for people. But, you know, I don't know, I hate to say redneck mentality, because again, that's not what we're not here to judge people, but it's very hard to educate people in this area when you know, you I don't know. Now I'm so frustrated.
Yeah. I think I would start with, if you can, I don't know what you can't say during the adoption for them to qualify for the treatment through insurance. But if you can start with that education piece, because I can see the huge sticker shock when they were, you know, they just took their pet to the vet. Now you're telling me I have to pay $1,200 to get something. I think that is very off-putting to a lot of people, but it also goes back to, it makes them never go to the vet, because every time they go to the vet, they're going to expect $1,000
right
quote. And that's, you know, vets aren't cheap. Some are, some aren't, but it kind of perpetuates that cycle of like, the vet's expensive, just don't ever go.
Right, and we have a lot of we've had dogs returned before because they went to the vet and they were tested positive, and the vet tells them how much it's going to cost, and then they return the dog, and the dog really is no better off. Now we know it's positive, and it's still not on prevention or treatment, because again, that's not something that the city funds for us. And then again, it's not always low income people. You know, you have the people that can totally afford it, they just don't. Maybe it's an education thing, maybe it's I don't want to. We have a lot of people that are, oh, my pet lives indoors, but I'm like, guess what, your pet goes out to potty, or I mean, I know I've had mosquitoes in my house before, and all it takes is one, and I just truly don't know what the option is for that. But I feel like as part of the education side of this, it's our duty to educate people, and we have to figure out a way to do that, but also not just leave it open-ended. We have to provide a resource for them. So I'm open if y'all have ideas for that.
So I'm curious from Danielle again, and in Pima, you don't see heartworm as often, but we have this terrible spore that's called valley fever. And it affects about 1/3 of the dogs coming into pack. And it's really hard to know what's going on. And there's 3 stages of it. It goes to from like your bones, deteriorating bones, to neurological, and it's wild. And there is not prevention for it. They're right now creating a vaccine, but and it comes from the dirt. So you know, you're sniffing around and you get valley fever. But I'm curious from Danielle, like, how have you all, because over the past few years, there has been a huge push to help people understand what valley fever is even. I feel like a lot of people don't know what we're talking about when we talk about heartworms or valley fever, right? Like, so how have you all done that in PAC?
The interesting part about valley fever is a lot of people who live here until their dog or themselves are affected by it don't know that it even exists unless you're a native. And it's atrocious. And your dog starts to lose weight and you don't even know why, and it's expensive to get blood work. And so we see these dogs show up here that are skin and bones, and we almost instantly know that they have valley fever. Valley fever is not super cheap to treat either. Fluconazole used to be crazy cheap, but in the last 10 years, it's gotten really expensive. So for us, we rely on our friends group a lot of times to help us with the dog that we have in our care to get through that. Obviously, we're not seeing dogs coming through here like you guys see heartworm go through your shelters with valley fever. It's just not as rampant as heartworm. But our friends group helps us a lot with that. And then just setting up the expectation, I think a lot of times is what we do for our adopters and what it's going to cost them before they even adopt the dog. And most of the time they're like, okay, I can afford that. Sometimes they're not, and they move on to the next dog. The difference between heartworm and valley fever is a lot of times valley fever dogs don't have to be on meds, depending upon how bad an owner has let it get. So that's something that we do. We just give them the expectation up front. Now, I'm not even going to pretend like I know what heartworm is because I've lived in Tucson my whole life. And so I don't know if that is an option to just kind of set that up for them in the beginning, like this is what it's going to cost you. But $900 adopting a dog out of the gate and $900, that's a lot of money.
And for valley fever, it's if they get to stage 3, they likely have to be on meds for life. And so and people don't know that either. Like maybe they go home with a container of pills, but then they don't know, and then they're coming back and their dog is just in terrible shape. But I think there's been a lot of just like community education, right? And just people are talking about it more. And I don't know, like I think sometimes we like assume that everybody knows what we're even saying, and people don't even know what heartworm is, so I don't know, like I wonder if there's some way that we turn like this HOS piece of like, how can we start talking about these things like in other spaces that aren't just, and like normalize it a little bit, because it needs to be normalized, I think, in some ways, like that this happens, and take the judgment out of it. And so this happened, and now what do we do, right? And like these are the options, and like to Jordana's point, from cheapest to most expensive, and like lay that out and what the differences are, right? I don't know, Jordana, what do you guys like? What do you do at APA?
So we're a little bit different because we're not government funded. But we, on our own dogs, we use ivermectin for heartworm prevention on site and in foster. And we dose it in a 1 cc syringe that we reuse, because we reuse syringes. And that's how we give heartworm prevention to our vets. Because there's no way we could afford it if we were buying like Iverheart tablets. It's too expensive. And then we do heartworm treatment, but we do a very scaled down. We do like 2 injections. We don't hospitalize anything. They come in for an appointment and they take them home, 20 minutes later. We do 30 days of doxy beforehand, but it's pretty much as cheap as we can get it. But I would say, I don't know that you can recommend using ivermectin to the public, but for your in-shelter dog, I would definitely use it. And I'm happy to share what we dose it at. It's super tiny. We dose it at like 0.03%.
Yeah, I would love that.
Yeah, I can get it to you. Do you want to I can probably find your email, but if you want to drop it in the chat, I'm happy to send you information.
Yeah, we would love that, because as like Shelby, our program coordinator, she's running all the fosters now, and that's what part of that is, providing them with flea, tick, and heartworm prevention. Except we have flea and tick when it's donated, but we rarely get heartworm prevention donated. So utilizing the ivermectin under a controlled environment through the fosters would be a great idea.
Yeah, I would definitely do that for sure.
I'm sorry to go off on this long heartworm tangent when we're here to talk about access to care, but I think it's really important. And thanks, Jordana, for all of your endless knowledge and resources.
Yeah, and I think it's worth, as I'm sitting here, it needs to be talked about in the external med working group because that's such a basic, like it should just be over-the-counter prevention. Why isn't it just over-the-counter medication that anybody can get? It's such a huge problem in many parts of the country. It's really expensive to treat. So the prevention needs to be made available. We know it's cheap, it's made out of ivermectin. So yeah, it's something that I can bring up to them and see, is there a way to change that? I mean, I don't think it's a huge issue with it.
Seems important. I wanted to ask Danielle one more question, and if anyone else has questions too, we have about 8 minutes left, but I'm wondering, like, what is your triage process? Like, how do you know that a dog goes here versus comes in?
Well, obviously not everything is cut and dry and we live in a gray area, right? Every animal is an individual. So me and Cynthia were actually just really having a conversation about that yesterday. And I think it has a lot to do with where you're placing it, right? If you're placing it to rescue, you're going to feel a lot more comfortable placing maybe something that has a little nuances about that animal. If you're placing it to a foster home, you may want to be a little bit more picky, but we fast track here. And so anything that comes through our admissions that is easy peasy, hasn't come in with a bite, didn't kill anything, goes basically straight to adoptions and bypasses our behavior team. And they focus more on animals that have, some naughty notes coming in. And so anything that's easy peasy, doesn't have anything, is going to be able to go straight to foster or rescue without stopping and going straight on. When you start to look at things that have killed something or have a bite history, obviously you're going to want to be a little bit more picky about where you're sending those. We have some fosters here that have taken directly from us before we started intake to placement some of our harder to place dogs to get better notes on them. So I think that building up a foster team of people who are interested in those sorts of dogs are important. And then, just building a relationship with your rescue groups. Obviously, you send them one naughty dog that you didn't tell them about, you may be burning that bridge right there. So you got to be real careful what you're doing and make sure that you're letting them know everything that you know, good, bad, or otherwise. So I don't know that we have a yes, this goes and no, this doesn't go. It's more of where's the appropriate place to place this dog. So we have a lot of dogs that have come in that have killed livestock. And is that something that can't go straight back out? No. Do we want to send it on a farm? Probably not. Maybe an apartment placement is better for that dog. So it's like anything behavior. There's no right answer. Every dog is an individual, and so you have to just kind of look at it that way.
Any other questions while we have 5 minutes?
I can just tell you guys, I pulled up some info. At least prior to COVID, the Pet Resource Center in Pima was taking about 2,000 calls a month from people looking to surrender pets, either for euthanasia or turn in strays, or couldn't keep them. And there was initially a really strategic plan to sort of parse out the resources so that they lasted as long as possible, and a couple different metric systems of measuring, and they were constantly in adjustment, but it ranged anywhere from 50 to 200 families actually receiving financial assistance every month.
Which obviously we are going through money very quickly, and have to adjust how we offer assistance to people on a regular basis based upon how much money we have. And I think everyone probably goes through that same thing. When we have all the money, we're like, yay, you get the money, everybody gets the money. And then you start to run out of it. You're like, oh, wait a minute, not everybody gets the money. So we use rubrics and we base it upon dog, cat, town, side of town. Is this something that's going to be treated and not worried about anymore? Is this something like valley fever that's going to be ongoing? All of those things play a role in who we can financially assist.
I have a question for y'all. When y'all are utilizing the home to home or the rehome or any of these sites, and the owners are reaching out to you for assistance, do y'all offer them resources for sterilizing these pets? Because that's been one of my big hangups with these programs, is that I am a huge advocate for spay neuter, which we all probably are, but I have a problem sharing a pet that is not sterilized, and a lot of these aren't. And so I'm wondering if y'all offer, hey, we offer low cost sterilization. Would you like to get your pet fixed before rehoming? Or, do most of y'all have vets on staff that offer that you can offer this? Or how do y'all handle that? Or do y'all just, hey, it's not our problem, move on?
Well, I think if we had, it will eventually be our problem, right? Because their puppies will end up here. But for us, we're not allowed to treat owned animals. So we can't our veterinarians can't do public spay and neuter, but we distribute money, and other organizations do, to what we call AWASA here. And so people can go to contracted places in town that accept AWASA and get it done for like $5 to $15.
Yeah, in my experience, it's just based on resources. You do as much as you can with what you have, and then work to do better. So I think if you don't have the resources to do the spay neuter, then you work to get those resources. But in the meantime, I wouldn't say it's a reason, because you're going to get stuck with that dog anyways, or that cat, right? Like, you either get stuck with it in your shelter, or it gets rehomed outside of you, and you can focus your energy on something else. So, I mean, I think you do as much as you can with the resources you have, and work to change what you want to change.
Yeah, I'd say sort of to comment on what Danielle, the limitations there and what you might do where you are, Brandy. We had to create a local ordinance. The state law says that that we can't do the sterilizations unless we set up by local ordinance the facilities for providing spay and neuter for the residents of our municipality. So we just have like a 1 paragraph ordinance that says that we can do that. So we do it. And then if you can't do that, then maybe, a voucher program with the clinics in your area or something like that could be funded through your organization or that Future Friends group.
It was definitely
Right.
something.
Oh, sorry, Erica, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, it was definitely something I was really worried about, that we would have a bunch of unaltered animals all over our website. Yes, we have unaltered kittens on there because we don't have any vets in town that will do kittens under 5 months old. So that's part of the issue. But again, like half the animals that are on our site right now are animals that were adopted from us. So they're already, altered. And then you have to realize that a lot of the people that are actually following through and providing you the information and the picture, and that you're able to advertise, that are showing this initiative, are already responsible. And so a lot of these animals are already coming through. They've been adopted from other rescues or shelters, or they've been already sterilized. So we're not running into too much of that, other than with the puppies and kittens.
Yeah, I think this is the issue with me coming from a rescue background into a municipal facility. There's no money. There's little resources, and our rescue actually has a voucher program. So we issue low income vouchers to residents in our city, or in our county actually. But of course we again run into the issue of we've issued $5,000 worth of vouchers, and I've only had in a year 1,700 returns. So can lead a horse to water. But anyways, I appreciate all of y'all's feedback. Y'all are amazing doing this, and again, it's a learning process, and any advice is so helpful.
I'm so glad you're here, Brandy. Thank you. And it's so nice to see all of you. I put a couple of links in the chat. One is the Found Foster Protocol for Chameleon, and then also a rehome protocol that PAC helped us create for COVID. So those are all on our website as well, on our resources page. But it's great to see you all, and looking forward to seeing you next week when we have Bobby and Maddie talking about fundraising. We'll try to get someone too from a government friends board so that we can talk about how to utilize a friends of to bring in millions of dollars.
Rory, is this call going to change and require a password like some of the other calls?
It will eventually, I think it's at the end of the month. So when we change to Wednesday, we'll also need a password.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's so good to see all of you, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks, Danielle.